Hello, boys and girls, and welcome back to another edition of Shared Reading brought to you by Mr. Skazen. We are on part two of this story. If you haven't listened to yesterday's reading of shared reading of The Great Tug-of-War, go back and watch yesterday's reading so you can get caught up on the story. If you did join me yesterday and you're ready for part two, then let's go. Okay, so part two, The Great Tug of War. Yesterday we left off with our character, Mamutla, the hare, and let's read our summary. Mamutla, the hare, challenges Tulu, the elephant, to a tug-of-war contest. The contest will be tomorrow morning at sunrise. Mamutla also challenges Kubu, the hippo, to a contest of tug-of-war. Mamutla thinks that he is the strongest. All right, let's go. That's where we left off. Let's go to our next page. If it will let me turn the page here. Oh, come on. Oh, oh. Come on. I just want to change the page here. Change the page. No, it's not going to. Oh. Oh, there we go. Had to sneak it in. All right. Finally changed our page. Okay. Sorry about that. Part two. Here we go. Oh, I guess actually before we start reading, remember our learning goal is we're looking for our key details that relate to our title, which is Tug of War. So we're looking for key details that relate to the Tug of War contest. We're also looking out for more literal and non-literal language. Paragraph 24, here we go. Tomorrow morning, when sun peeps over the mountain, I'll come with a rope. Then you'll see, Mamutla boasted. Without waiting for an answer, he scurried away. And you know what? We can highlight it as well, because this has to do with the tug of war, right? Because Mamutla is saying, I'm going to come with a rope. You'll see. Okay, then you'll see. And it's tomorrow morning. So interesting. So it's going to be the same time as his other contest with Tolu, the elephant. I wonder how he's going to manage that. All that day, Mamutla worked hard at making an extra long, extra strong rope. He had only just finished by the time sun had traveled far across the land and was giving way to moon. Before going to sleep, Mamutla wound up the rope and hung it over a branch for the live long tree hanging over the entrance to his cave. So this has to do with our contest, right? All day we learn Mamutla. He works hard at making an extra long, extra strong rope. So it took him all day to make that. The next morning, Mamutla woke even before sun began to send his red and orange warnings to moon. By the time sun was creeping over Lanong Mountain, the little hare was leaping down Kololo Hill. The long, strong rope was hung over one shoulder. Okay. So, we know, so we have a couple things going on in this paragraph. Some non-literal language, right? Sun began to send his red and orange warnings to moon. Now, the reason this is non-literal language is because we know that, the sun, he doesn't actually get on a telephone and say, "Hey, Moon, I'm sending you some of my red and orange warnings. It's time for you to leave. The sun just, um, the sun rises and the sun's rays just start going across our sky, but there's no actual orange and red warnings that flash to the moon that signals the moon to go away. So that's why would be an example of non-literal language. There's not actually warnings going across the sky and in space to moon. The other thing we learned kind of about our tug of war, we could put back at a key detail, is the sun. He woke up and the little hare was sleeping down Kololo Hill, and he had the rope, and it was hung over one shoulder. So now we know, okay, our friend Mamutla, he's on his way to the great tug of war. Sure enough, Talu the elephant was there at the bottom of the hill. He pretended to take no notice of Mamutla and carried on munching. So, key detail, right? Talu, he was there. He's already there, pretending he doesn't notice. Good morning, Talu. I've brought the rope. You take this. I'll take the other end and run over there. He pointed to some very thick bushes. When I'm ready to pull, you'll hear me whistle like this. Mamutla whistled softly, then held his breath until Talu began to wind the rope around his single tusk and trunk. Okay, so we have a couple things going on here relating to our tug of war game, right? So we already know he brings the rope, but we learned that when Mamutla's ready, when I'm ready to pull, you'll hear me whistle. Okay, and we also know he's going to be hiding, run over there, and he's going to hang out in some very thick bushes. Okay. Quick as a riverbank fly, Mamutla hopped towards the thick bushes, calling back towards Talu. You'll soon see that I'm stronger. But Mamutla did not stop at the bushes. He still had more rope as he bounded on down to the waterhole. Kubu, the hippo, pretended to take no notice and sank beneath the water. Mamutla waited for her eyes to rise. Good morning, Kubu. I've brought the rope. You take this. Do you see those bushes? I've left the other end just behind them. I'll run and get it, and when I'm ready to pull, you'll hear me whistle like this. Mamutla whistled softly, then held his breath until Kubu clutched the rope tight within her jaws. Quick as a clip springer, Mamutla skipped to the thickest of bushes. So for our key detail, our key takeaway is, he's doing the same thing that he did with Talu, the elephant, right? He says, I brought the rope, you take this. I've left just the other end behind them. So he's giving Kubu um, the same rules, right? When I'm ready, you'll hear me whistle, and oh yeah, I'll just be behind these bushes here. So I don't know what he's gonna do, but how is he gonna be against these two gigantic animals when he's just a small little hare? Let's find out. Oh yeah, that's the one thing I forgot about this program here that doesn't let us keep our Annotations. So we're on a new page, right? Okay. Paragraph 35. As soon as he had hidden himself well, Mamutla took a deep, deep breath and whistled. This time, for all he was worth, from each end he could hear as Taloo and Kubu began to pull. They pulled and tugged and tugged and pulled. Mamutla made a little peephole for himself on each side of his hideout. First it was Taloo, humping and thumping. Next it was Kubu, shaking and quaking. Great drops of sweat poured off Taloo, almost enough to make a river, while Kubu splashed so wildly that she might have emptied the water hole. Mamutla laughed so much that he was nearly sick. He didn't know who looked funnier, Taloo or Kubu. Okay, so we learn a couple things, right? A couple details. So he first Mamutla hides himself, then he whistles, and Taloo and Kubu began to pull. Okay, so they begin to pull. The tug of war continued from sunup until sundown. Neither Taloo nor Kubu wanted to give up because neither wanted to lose. What could be more terrible than to be beaten by a little hare? Okay, so we learn the tug of war continues from sunup until sundown. Neither wanted to lose. Just as sun gave way to moon, Tulu the elephant felt that he could not go on for another second, and Kubu the hippo also felt she must give up. Finally, at the very same moment, each of them let go of the rope. Okay, so a big event just happened, right? Let me make this go down a little bit. Here's our animals tugging. There's Mamutla hiding in the bush. Um, so where was it here? Oh, here we go. Right at the bottom. Finally, at this very same time, very same moment, each of them let go of their rope. And I really like using our text, our illustrations. They are really giving us a good idea of understanding the story and kind of what each character is seeing. So it gives us a good perspective on, you know, our hippo friend and our elephant friend thinking that they're tugging against this silly little hare in this bush, and Mamutla's just in the middle laughing at them both. So I think this picture really does help us understand the perspective of each animal. So when you're reading, make sure you're looking at the pictures and really digesting and thinking about how they are helping you understand what is going on. Okay, paragraph 38. Kubu gasped for great gulps of air and collapsed out of sight. Taloo panted like he had never panted before and dragged himself to the water hole. There he slapped and slurped up gigantic dollops of water. Luckily, there was some left. He swallowed so much, so fast, that he got the hiccups. While he was hiccuping, Kubu came up for another gulp of air. Her mouth was open wide enough to swallow an elephant. Kubu saw Taloo, and Taloo saw Kubu, and in an instant, they knew what had happened. Were you? Snorted Taloo. Were you? Spluttered Kubu. Was it Mamutla's imagination that made him see steam rising from both animals? Time to go, he thought, but not before he let out one last loud And that is the end. Okay, so our last kind of key details here is this is just kind of filler stuff. They're really tired, so they go into the water. But this part is really wrapping up our story, right? When Tulu saw Kubu, and in an instant, they knew what had happened, right? This is kind of wrapping up our story of our event of our tug of war. They both know. Um, they both know they've been tricked, right? So I'm going to go over here. Let's start our summary. So thinking back to our last page, let's make this. We'll put our summary. So our last page, right? They were just kind of setting up the tug of war in the morning. So we can say our summary of our part two. Maybe we'll put part two just as a reminder. This is not the summary of the entire story. This is just the summary of part two of the story, the second half. Okay, so in part two, the first thing that we were underlining, our key details, was Mamutla. I always have to check and to make sure I'm spelling these names right. Mamutla, yep. Okay, so Mamutla on the other page, he brings his rope first to the elephant, Tulu, and tells him to grab onto the rope and wait for him to whistle. Right? And then he does, and I could write the same thing, but I'm just going to say Mutla, then, actually, why not? Let's be thorough. Then goes to Kubu and gives him the rope and tells him to wait for his whistle. Maybe we should whistle to start. Okay, and now we are back on this page, so we can take a look at some of our underlines. So Mamutla hides in a bush and whistles, right? And then Kubu and Tulu start pulling. And we can see, okay, we can look back at our notes. They pull, neither want to lose. Finally, at the same time, they let the rope go. Okay, so we can add to our summary the two animals pull all day and finally let go at the same time. Okay, and then here they meet in the watering hole. Both are tired and rest in the water. Bring hole. Kubu and Tulu realize that they have been tugging against each other. And that's our summary, right? We've summed up 4 pages for our part two. We put all of our key details and we wrapped them up together for a summary. So Mamutla brings his rope to Taloo and tells him to grab onto the rope and wait for him to whistle. Mamutla then goes to Kubu and gives him the rope and tells him to wait for his whistle to start. Mamutla hides in a bush and whistles. Kubu and Tulu start pulling. The two animals pull all day and finally let go at the same time. Both are tired and rest in the watering hole. Kubu and Tulu realize that they have been tugging against each other. And that, boys and girls, wraps up our part 2 of the Great Tug-of-War. Until next time, have a great day. Mr. Skazen, out.